Hello everyone, I'm Quadra, and this is my second video update for my megadungeon, the Blades of Gixa. This is the new page that I've made, but before we get into the details, a little info about the dungeon. If you haven't seen the previous video, I go over all of this. You should watch that first, but as a quick recap, this is a mega dungeon that I made over the course of a year by drawing one room every day on a calendar for the year 2023, starting with January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and so on. Each month is a floor of the dungeon. So underneath January is February, then March, and so on. A mega dungeon is a really big dungeon that you could set an entire RPG campaign inside of. This is a more or less system neutral setting, so it'll work with most RPG systems, potentially with a little bit of tweaking. Now you can see here, the way I made this, I drew the dungeon and I keyed it directly in the drawings. The idea being that for the referee or dungeon master, or whatever you want to call it, the person running the game, they could have this in front of them, and for the most part, they wouldn't need to be flipping pages all the time. All of the information, the layout, the keys, most everything that they need is just right here. This kind of came naturally out of the format that I was working in and produced this very dense, busy aesthetic. Now, I was pretty much improvising all of this as I went along, and as I got towards the end, I tried to look back at previous months and make some connections so that there'd be some degree of cohesion for this whole thing. My previous video was about figuring out how it all fit together, and this was the result. A complex flowchart that doubles as a collection of tables and a timeline that gives some context to all of the levels of the mega dungeon. Now, I said in my last video, the next step would be to work on the surface level. Because I have these 12 levels of mega dungeon for the 12 months, I didn't have a surface level. Because this dungeon doesn't exist in a void, there is a world that it sits underneath. And above the dungeon is a small town on an island, and so I had started working on a new spread for that town, and all of the buildings and the people in it, factions, and so on. But as I was keying it, I realized that while I had created all of this context for the dungeon, I didn't really have that much context for the surface. I had a little bit up here. But to really get at the characters and factions and motivations of what players would encounter in session 1, right at the beginning, I needed a little more information, a little more context. And I realized the players would too. So that brings us to the subject of this update, this page right here. The title of this page is The Greater World as It Is Widely Known, and this covers pretty much all of the information that starting player characters would know. I'm going to go through this in detail, so let's take a closer look. So up here we have the title, and most surface-dwelling characters will have a general knowledge of the following. Basically, everything on this page is more or less public information. You could make a copy of this page and give it to your players before the game. That said, don't expect all of them to actually read it. You might need to give a little Cliff's Notes version during character creation. But let's step through it. So up here we have a little map of the Caradelian Isles. You can see it's this big archipelago on the Sea of Sorrows. This city, Camorra, is the capital of the Grand Admiralty, which we'll get into. And over here are the Outer Isles, and this island in particular is called Montiri. We'll get to that as well. So the Caradelian Isles comprise the entire world as far as it's known. They lie in the vast expanse known as the Sea of Sorrows, a hungry ocean slowly rising from the near constant rain that falls upon it. Someday the waters will complete their consumption of the isles in the long drowning of this world. So this is a kind of dying Earth setting. It is a world that is doomed to this long, slow, rising tide, this flood that never stops. The strength of the rain ebbs and flows, but even on the brightest, clearest days, a fine mist fills the air. It never stops. The days are lit by a lightly obscured sun, and the nights see a pair of moons, Yormu, the blood moon, and Kunda, the amber moon, twisting through the sky. The moons are said to be the eyes of the great sky serpent Yormukunda, who swallowed the sun and carries it in its belly. It creates the cycle of night and day as it flies across the sky. As its belly passes overhead, the sun inside illuminates the world, and when it dips below the horizon, night falls, and the moons become visible, and pinpricks of sunlight peek through its scales. So here we have this kind of cosmology of this world. It's always raining, it's flooded, the land is slowly receding, there's 2 moons. The sun has been eaten by this sky serpent, and the moons are its eyes. and the stars in the night sky are little bits of sunlight peeking out through its scales. My approach to the world here is fairly mythic in terms of how it works. The people of this world don't live on a planet that orbits a sun and has 2 moons. They live in this doomed ocean, and a great serpent flies through the sky every day, carrying the sun which it has swallowed, and it sheds water on them in the form of this eternal rain. This adventure kind of deals with how people and their actions and events become stories and become mythic in time. And I try to reflect that even in how the world itself works. So anyway, there's a big serpent in the sky. Let's move on. So, the Grand Admiralty rules the Isles with its massive fleet. It is a predominantly human martial empire, though it counts many halflings and other folk among its citizenry. It is similarly tolerant of the worship of local deities and ancestors, so long as they are not called upon for magical purposes. As long as taxes are paid and the primacy of the Admiralty and Church goes unchallenged, island governors can rest easy, knowing the warships on the horizon are not coming for them. So this entire map is ostensibly ruled by the Grand Admiralty, based out of Camorra, and it is this kind of militaristic empire that is tied to a particular belief system, the worship of this sky serpent. It is, however, fairly tolerant of different peoples and different beliefs, as long as they don't challenge the status quo and the dominant powers. They have to govern the entire world, so being really intolerant would be challenging. The Church of Jormungandr is the official faith of the Admiralty, and its ordained clergy are the only sanctioned magic users. All others are hunted and killed. Church doctrine holds that Jormungandr weeps bitter tears, the rain that drowns the world, in lamentation of the vicious infighting and fell magics of its subjects, the people of the Isles. The Church aims to propitiate the god by supporting the unification and pacification of the Isles under the Admiralty, and by suppressing evil magics, as only this can end the deluge. So the doctrine is that Jormungandr, the sky serpent, is drowning the world in its sorrow for all of the evils that the people of the world do to each other. And the only way to get it to stop is to stop being evil. And that means 1, no gods above Jormungandr, and 2, no magic that doesn't come from Jormungandr. And they say that if they do this, the rain will finally stop, the waters will recede, and the world will be saved. How right are they about this? Play to find out. The Outer Isles of the East are said to be where the Grand Admiralty's ironclad grip is weakest, though the Admiralty would never admit this. It's rumored that, while loyal governors rule many isles, perhaps just as many are breakaway kingdoms, pirate havens, mutineer colonies, and the like. Whatever the truth may be, they make an enticing destination for those seeking freedom, adventure, forbidden arcane knowledge, or stupendous, ill-gotten wealth. Basically, the islands closer to the capital, that's your law and order area. That's where the bulk of the Admiralty is. That's where their warships are, and that's where all their trade is, and their colonies and settlements. The Outer Isles to the east, while still technically under Grand Admiralty control, they're spread a lot thinner out here. And so it's a little more anything goes, which will be very attractive to adventurers, like your player's characters. The High Fleet is a mystery common folk know little about, except they are elves, their ships are fast, sleek, and dangerous, they ply the waters of the Outer Isles, and they do not bend the knee to the Admiralty. All beyond this is speculation and hearsay. They are vicious corsairs, they are undead, they are agents of, or wish to kill, the Sky Serpent. Amidst all the rumors and fear, a recent and surprising development. The High Fleet has begun establishing embassies on some Admiralty Isles. So the High Fleet is this fleet of elves. They have no land, they live on their ships, and they sail the Outer Isles, avoiding the Admiralty, sometimes skirmishing with them. They're pretty insular, and so to the people who live on land, and especially to the people of the Western Admiralty, they're kind of a mystery. They sort of have this legendary quality to them, which makes it rather strange that they've begun creating embassies. It seems like something about their relationship with the Admiralty, which has long been not very good, has changed. Alright, next up, the well-known languages of the Isles. So I've defined here 6 languages that are fairly well known on the Isles. This is not comprehensive. There are sure to be more, especially once you start delving. But these are the ones that if you live on the surface, you will be aware of. It doesn't mean that you know all these languages. You almost certainly don't. So Thurvan is the common tongue of the Admiralty. It's widely spoken, especially in the West. It's common, basically. Sagaric is the old legal and liturgical tongue of the Admiralty elite and the church clergy. So this is kind of their Latin, so to speak. If you're dealing with official documents or scripture or anything like that, knowing Sagaric is going to be very helpful. Common folk generally don't know it. Neftech is the Elvish tongue, mostly kept within insular Elvish communities. Doesn't mean that no non-Elves speak Neftech, but it is rare. Govdoch is Old Elvish. It's a dead tongue found in ancient Elvish records and arcane texts. So again, it's kind of like Sagaric, except that modern elves don't really use it, except in historical or magical contexts. Eru is the Dwarvish tongue, and it's said to be unchanged for millennia. It's very uncommon. So dwarves, as we'll see soon, are quite rare. They're not necessarily as private as the elves, but there just aren't that many of them. So you don't encounter Eru very much. And finally, Kurtak, the kobold tongue, most commonly heard sprinkled through Outer Isle patois. So Kurtak is what the kobolds speak. Kobolds are one of the major species of this world, and in their communities they tend to speak Kurtak, but also in the Outer Isles you'll hear bits of Kurtak sprinkled in. Sailors in particular will speak Thurvan, and they might have some loan words from Neftech or Eru, but they'll have quite a few from Kurtak. So if your background is a sailor, you'd probably know Thurvan, but you might also know Kurtak. You might half know Kurtak. You can order food and have a basic conversation. Okay, the Isle folk. The Isles are home to many peoples. These are the most common, but there are others. Interbreeding is fairly common. All right. So the 5 major species, we have humans, the most populous folk and the most prominent in the Admiralty, known for fighting and sailing prowess. We have halflings, small furry-footed folk common across the Admiralty, especially as farmers, merchants, and administrators. Elves, lithe, long-lived, point-eared mystic folk, uncommon and subject to suspicion from association with magic in the High Fleet. Dwarves, short, stocky, bearded folk from underground kingdoms, most long sealed off from the surface, very rare. And kobolds, semi-subterranean lizard folk, not commonly integrated into the Admiralty, and they live in Outer Isle enclaves. So these are basically the classic fantasy species that you're used to. There's not too much of a difference, except for maybe how they exist in this particular world, right? Humans are the most populous, they're dominant, they basically run the Admiralty. Halflings are also quite common, but they tend to have more administrative positions or work, agrarian jobs, but they're quite integrated into the Admiralty. Elves also exist in the Admiralty, but they tend to be looked at with a bit more suspicion, so they kind of keep to their own a bit more. Dwarves, there were these underground dwarf kingdoms that have mostly just sealed themselves off from the world, and so you don't see dwarves much. There are some communities of surface dwarves, and there may even be 1 or 2 of these kingdoms that is not totally sealed off, that still it does some trade with the Admiralty. That's kind of up to you. And then kobolds, the lizard folk, they live more in the east in the Outer Isles. They're not very integrated into the Admiralty. They more kind of keep to their own, and and they live out here. You also will commonly see kobold sailors out in the Outer Isles. Okay, now for the calendar. This was pretty fun to figure out. It took a few tries. You can see that this is not the same piece of paper. It's just stuck on here with tape because this was not my first crack at making this page. So the Isles have these 2 moons, the eyes of Jormungandr, flying through the sky, and they use them to tell time. They have a lunar calendar. So 1 year is 364 days, just to make the math easy. There are 13 months of 28 days each, and you can tell what day of the month it is based on what the moons look like. So down here, we have the days of the month, 1 through 28, and then above them, we have the moons. So we have Jormu, the red blood moon, and Kunda, the yellow amber moon. And on the first, we have Jormu is a full moon and Kunda is a new moon. And we can see over the course of the first week, Jormu goes from full to new and Kunda does the opposite, right? So the dark part of the moon starts at the bottom and kind of creeps up. And similarly, the light part of the moon starts at the bottom and creeps up. Then, in the second week, from the 7th to the 14th, they kind of shift places in the sky, right? So Yormu is higher in the sky initially, and Kunda is lower. And then by the time we get to the 14th, they've swapped places. So now the yellow moon, Kunda, is higher in the sky for the next week. And then over the course of the week following, they swap again, and we're back to the start. And you can see that during the second week, Yormu is completely dark, but Kunda shifts from being full to dark to full again, and it does it in a different direction, right? So you can see that this dark bit comes from the right, and then we have the half moon, crescent, and then the new moon. And then it goes back. So the second half of this calendar, from the 15th to the 28th, is basically the same as the first half, but the moons are swapped. So this is a weird system, right? Why did they work like this? What's going on with these moons? Well, underneath this diagram, we have this text. Church astronomers say this movement pattern arises from Yormukunda twisting and blinking. There is a logic to this, and to demonstrate it, I have made this crude prop of Yormukunda's head. So this is just a wedge made of foam scraps that I've painted black, and then I put 2 plastic domes on it to represent the eyes, and you can see we've got Yormu, the blood moon, and Kunda, the amber moon. So this is the head of the giant serpent in the sky. So what's happening when we're on the first day of the month is we're looking at Yormu, the blood moon. It's full, and Kunda is a new moon. We can't see it. And that's because we're looking at the snake's head from the side. Then, as we shift from the 1st to the 7th, this is what's happening. It's rotating, right? And so here you can see that we've got this gibbous moon, and Kunda has this crescent shape. And here we're looking at each one from the side. So we've got half moons, and then this becomes a crescent. This is gibbous. And then we've got the full moon. And that's the state that we're in at the 7th. Okay, so then we have this other set of phases where Kunda goes from full moon to new moon to full moon again, but in a different direction. So what's happening here is it's blinking with its nictating membrane. So it comes from the front like this. So here is where it starts blinking. Now it's partway through blinking. Then it's like this. And finally, we're at a new moon. And then it retracts the membrane. And now we're at the 15th, at which point it keeps spinning. And we reveal our red moon, Yormu, and the same thing happens. And when that's done, we're back on day 1. So that's a little behind the scenes of why the moons work the way they do. All right, you don't really need to know any of that. All you need to know, really, is just look up what day of the month it is, and that's what the moons look like. That's it. And this will have some effect on certain things in the world, notably clerical magic of Yormukundan clerics. But again, you don't need to know if it's blinking or twisting or whatever. You just need to know, like, okay, cool, it's, the 20th. So Kunda looks like this and Yormu looks like that. Anyway, let's talk about seasons and months. So the Cardalian Isles are temperate to tropical, so seasonal temperature changes are not very significant, but there is some variation in intensity. Months 1 through 3 are the calm season, and 7 through 9 are stormy. So here we have 13 months, and I've named them Arvin, Bellis, Chorus, Distach, Elwid, Farug, Gort, Halmar, Ixnid, Joris, Kundis, Luma, and Mozan. These month names may have some, historical meaning and whatnot. I don't elaborate on it in here, and I probably won't in the final book. But, you can see Joris and Kundis probably derive from Yormu and Kunda. Also, you may notice that they're alphabetical. I did that because it just felt like it would be easier to keep track of. And if I'm making up the months anyway, why not make things a little easier for us referees? And you can see underneath the months, I have labeled 1 through 3 is the calm season, 7, 8, 9 are stormy, and then this stretch of time, everything's a little bit warmer, and then everything is a little cooler towards the end of the year. So the way these different seasons will manifest is I'll have a simple D6 weather table. So during most of the year, you just roll a d6. Higher rolls are worse weather, and lower rolls are better. During the calm season, you roll d6 -1, so you'll never get the worst weather, and you'll get the nice calm weather much more often. And then during the stormy season, you roll d6 +1, so you'll never get the nicest weather, and you'll get crazy storms and hurricanes a lot more often. And I think that's basically all of the detail that system needs. especially because even though I have all of this, world and context, I'm assuming you're spending most of your time underground. So it'll matter, but it's not worthy of a ton of detail. Okay, now for the bottom of the page. Gods and magic. Worship of the sky serpent Jormungandr dominates religious life in the Admiralty, and while veneration of other gods and spirits is accepted, they must never be held above the great serpent, nor may they be called upon for magic. Sorcerous acts channeling any power other than Jormungandr are an affront to the god, and serve only to hasten the drowning of the world. Thus, these acts are punishable by death. Elves are regarded as particularly suspect because of their supposed innate affinity for magic, and because even Admiralty elves are often suspected of secret allegiance to the High Fleet. So here we get back into, there are all of these different gods and spirits and ancestors and whatnot that people worship across the Isles, but officially Jormungandr is top dog. And if you challenge that, they kill you. Now, of course, there will be people in the world that don't believe that, and maybe those people practice forbidden magics, but they gotta be careful, just a heads up for you magic user types. Okay, and finally, the Isle Montiri. Again, Montiri is this little dot right here. Not a big island, and it's off in the Outer Isles. The Isle Montiri is a small outer isle whose governor, Lady Ilstin Bane, remains loyal to the Admiralty. Baintok, the island's main settlement, is a small but busy town, an important way station and trade port for the Admiralty in contested waters. Unusually for a town of its size, it is host to guild houses for the Noble Seafarers Society, the Privateers Guild, the Mercantilium, the Merchants Guild, and, it's rumored, even the shadowy and feared Admiralty Evidence Bureau, who do the Admiralty's darkest and most secret dirty work. And now, perhaps most surprising of all, the High Fleet has established an embassy in Baintok, seemingly a sign of some newly forged detente between the naval powers. But why all this presence and activity here all of a sudden? What has gotten the powers so interested in this little island? Could there really be something to the old sailors' tales about Montiri, of secret catacombs hiding the wealth of kings, of secret histories long buried, of artifacts forged by forgotten gods, artifacts of such incredible power they could reshape our doomed world? Well, as I say, there's only one way to find out. So Montiri, for such a small island, it's got a lot going on, especially recently. So it has these guild houses, there's the Noble Seafarers Society, which is a hoity-toity name for the Privateers Guild. Basically, it's sailors who get licensed by the Admiralty to do piracy on non-Admiralty ships. So that would be like the High Fleet or other unaffiliated ships in the Outer Isles. And the Mercantilium, which is the Merchants Guild, although they may be involved in some shady business. And the Admiralty Evidence Bureau. This is kind of the intelligence agency of the Admiralty. They're secretive, they do dirty deeds, they are not the people you want knocking on your door, I'll say that much. And they're there too, supposedly. What's that about? And then there's the High Fleet. And the High Fleet does not have good relations historically with the Admiralty, but they've just opened up an embassy on this little island. There's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of stuff going on. Something's up. So I guess we're going to Montiri. So that's this page. Hopefully it gives you an idea of the world that we're in. It will be accompanied by another page, which I'm working on, that is more for the referee's eyes and gets into some of the real motivations behind these powers. So this is not exactly complete, and I am likely to edit some of this, but with this book, every part of it is kind of interconnected to every other part of it, and so as I develop more of these pages, I'm likely to find connections that need to be made or amendments that need to be made, and I'll be tweaking things as I go. Anyway, I hope this was a fun look into this world, and the Blades of Gixa was kickstarted, but it is still available for pre-order at paradiso.ooo/Gixa. Oh, one more thing. If there's more information that you would like to know about the world that you feel would be helpful on this page, do let me know in a comment, and also let me know if you were to run this campaign, what system would you use? I will be creating some guidance for running it and adapting it to different systems. As a baseline, it's meant to be system neutral, which means broadly compatible with most old school style RPGs, basically stuff derived from basic D&D, but I will have some guidance on converting it to newer style systems. Finally, if you want to support me spending all my time creating weird stuff like this, you can become a member on the YouTube channel, or better yet, on my website, paradiso.zone. You can sign up for free and get updates and notifications when there's a new video, things like that. But if you become a paid member, there's lots of great goodies and rewards that come with that. Plus, you'll get your name in the credits like these lovely people. Thank you all so much for your support. You're keeping the lights on while I work on this. I really appreciate it. I am constantly humbled by all of the enthusiasm and support for this and my other projects. It's really cool. Thank you all so much. All right, see you in the next one.